Okay, so it was 1969, and my grandfather, let's just call him Grandpa for simplicity, he was on his second tour in Vietnam, and at this time in his life, he wasn't religious per se, and didn't really have a connection to God. During his second tour, he served as a military advisor for the South Vietnamese forces and aided them in their fight against the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong. This story was passed down to my dad, and he passed it down to me when I was still in elementary school, private school, and was curious about religion. This story explained to me how my grandfather personally connected with God and how one little object can save someone's life. As a military advisor, my grandpa was one of the people in charge of the unit and made a lot of the executive decisions in times of crisis. On one of the unit's offensive missions, they almost became overwhelmed by North Vietnamese forces and had to retreat up a volcano in order to gain some vantage over the jungle setting that they were in. Subsequently, the North Vietnamese forces surrounded the volcano and started to come up the sides from all directions to capture and kill the unit that my grandpa was in. They used heavy artillery and bombed the inside of the volcano in order to try and get them to come down the side of the mountain. So in order to save his unit from a potential massacre, my grandpa and a small unit of the men that were in charge would run down the mountain or the volcano through the enemy forces and call in airstrikes via radio signals. And they would call it into their exact location, and then they would run up the volcano through the enemy forces while they were being bombed below. And after days of doing this, the North Vietnamese became suspicious and were wondering how they were getting bombed so accurately, and decided to search for whoever was calling in the strikes. And so one day they discovered the location of the unit and started bombing them. And my grandpa had to run up the side of the mountain and basically escape the bombing that they were hitting them with, like heavy artillery and mortars. And he was flung to the ground and had to push himself back up and search around for an injury or a wound, and he couldn't seem to find one. And so he had decided that the adrenaline that he was feeling was what was keeping him from feeling any wound, and ran back up the mountain and couldn't find an injury until he saw a large tear in his rucksack, which is what he just carries with him. And he remembered that he, as a boy, went to church a lot and wasn't really religious, and then during his first tour he decided to carry a pocket Bible, which is about, this big. And he would keep it in the pocket closest to his back, like right here. And so he was searching through his rucksack to find what caused the tear, and there was a piece of shrapnel, probably, this big, that had gone through the front cover and every page of the Bible and hit the last cover and stopped, and it was right next to him, so if it had gone through, it would have killed him. And I don't know if religion is what saved my grandpa's life or if it was just luck, but all I can say is that I'm forever grateful for that tiny little Bible that saved his life.